Hey guys, tonight you're going to try something most people throughout history desperately wished they never had to do. You're going to sleep on a wooden sailing ship during a storm. Now, if you've ever complained because your neighbor was mowing the lawn at 7 in the morning, or because your mattress was just a little too firm, or because your hotel room had partial ocean views instead of full ocean views, congratulations. You are about to become spectacularly humbled, because tonight your bedroom is roughly the size of a broom closet. Your mattress is made of woven rope. The ceiling is trying to hit you in the face. Everything smells like wet wood, spoiled meat, tar, sweat, smoke, mold, fish, and about 200 men who haven't seen a proper bath in several months. And somehow, you're expected to get a good night's sleep, while the ocean attempts to erase your existence. So before we begin, take a second to like the video if you enjoy these slow journeys through history, and tell me in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? It's always fascinating seeing just how many different corners of the world gather here to drift off together. Now, dim the lights. Turn the fan on if you like the feeling of wind. Maybe wrap yourself in a blanket. Because by the end of tonight, you'll be very grateful your bed isn't hanging from the ceiling. Close your eyes if you'd like, and let's step aboard. Welcome to your floating coffin. The year doesn't matter very much. It could be 1588, 1715, 1716, 1717. The ocean is remarkably democratic. It tries to drown everyone equally. You stand on a dock before sunrise. Fog drifts over black water like ghostly fingers. Somewhere nearby, a bell rings. Not cheerfully, more like it has accepted that everyone listening to it has questionable life choices. In front of you rises the ship. She is enormous. Not by today's standards, of course. A modern cruise ship would look at her the way an elephant looks at a hamster, but to someone living centuries ago, she's a floating city made entirely of oak. Massive masts claw into the gray morning sky. Hundreds of ropes crisscross overhead like an impossible spider web. The sails are bundled tightly, waiting. The hull bears scars from storms, cannonballs, careless docking, and the occasional captain who thought maps were merely strong suggestions. She creaks constantly. Old wooden ships never stop talking. Every plank complains. Every beam sighs. Every nail whispers. This seemed like a good idea 200,000 waves ago. You step onto the gangplank. It sways beneath your boots. Immediately, your brain begins sending strongly worded complaints to your legs. The dock suddenly seems very far away. One sailor brushes past carrying a barrel nearly twice your size. He barely notices the rocking. You, meanwhile, are concentrating with Olympic intensity on remaining upright. Good start. The smell hits next, not all at once. It arrives in layers. First, salt, fresh sea air, actually pleasant. Then, tar. Sticky black pitch smeared into every crack to stop the ocean from politely entering the ship. Then smoke from the galley. Then damp wood. Then mildew. Then livestock. Yes. The chickens are coming too. Possibly pigs. Maybe a goat. Transportation was expensive. Everyone traveled together. Humans, animals. Food, weapons, rum, hope, poor decisions. Everything. Then the sweat. Hundreds of men. Heavy wool clothing. Hard labor, little fresh water for washing. Imagine a crowded subway inside a lumber yard. during a fish market, wrapped in a wet blanket. You're getting close. Not exactly a candle with hints of lavender. One sailor notices your expression. He laughs. You'll stop noticing after a week. That is not the reassurance you were hoping for. You make your way below deck. The sunlight disappears almost immediately. The air grows cooler, damp, heavy. The ceiling lowers. You instinctively duck. A veteran sailor doesn't. He slams directly into a beam. The loud crack echoes through the ship. He doesn't even react. Apparently, this has happened so often that his skull has simply accepted its relationship with architecture. You'll learn quickly or repeatedly, whichever comes first. Lanterns flicker along narrow passages. Their light dances across curved wooden walls. Nothing is straight. Nothing is level. Everything leans. Everything moves. The ship breathes around you, not literally. That would be considerably more alarming. But wood expands, contracts, groans, flexes, thousands of joints rubbing together with every passing wave. If modern hotels advertise soundproof rooms, this place advertises continuous unsettling noises. Somewhere above, boots thunder across the deck. Someone shouts. A pulley squeals. A cannon shifts slightly. Water splashes against the hull. Another mysterious thump echoes somewhere in the darkness. You decide not to investigate. History repeatedly demonstrates that mysterious noises aboard wooden ships are rarely encouraging. Eventually, you reach where you'll be sleeping, or at least attempting to. Forget beds, forget cabins, forget privacy, unless you're the captain, and you are definitely not the captain. You're an ordinary sailor, which means your bedroom is a hammock. That's it. A rectangle of heavy canvas, suspended between two hooks, floating above the deck. At first glance, it doesn't look too terrible. Then you notice there are hundreds of them, packed shoulder to shoulder, like sardines. Except the sardines probably have more personal space. Each hammock hangs barely inches from the next. If one sailor snores, congratulations, it's now everyone's snore. If someone turns over, the entire row begins gently swinging. It's less like sleeping alone, and more like becoming part of a synchronized human pendulum. Oddly enough, that wasn't entirely a bad thing. But we'll come back to that later. For now, you're just trying to figure out how anyone climbs into one without immediately becoming tangled, like yesterday's fishing net. A sailor demonstrates. He sits, swings one leg, lies back. Done. Effortless. You try. The hammock immediately rotates. You panic. Your feet leave the floor. For one glorious second, you achieve flight. Then gravity remembers your address. You spill onto the deck in a spectacular display of historical incompetence. Nobody helps. They've all done it. Some are trying very hard not to laugh. Others are failing. One old sailor nods sympathetically. Gets everyone. Wonderful. Your dignity has officially gone overboard before the ship has. Eventually, with enough awkward flailing, you manage to settle into the hammock. It's strange. Not uncomfortable exactly. Just different. Instead of pressing against a mattress, the fabric wraps around you. Like a cocoon. Or perhaps a burrito. History's least appetizing burrito. The canvas smells faintly of salt, tar, smoke, and whoever slept here before. You choose not to think about that last part. Outside, the wind begins to rise. The ship rocks gently. At first, the hammock swings with it. It's almost peaceful. Almost, you begin to understand why sailors grew fond of these hanging beds. On land, the ground remains still while your body moves. At sea, the hammock moves with the ship. It reduces the violent tossing. It's surprisingly clever. Ancient engineering often looks primitive, until you realize it solved problems modern furniture never had to consider. Your expensive memory foam mattress has many talents. Remaining usable during a hurricane is not one of them. You close your eyes, just for a moment. The wood creaks softly. Rain begins tapping somewhere overhead. Voices murmur. Someone quietly sings an old sea ballad in the darkness. Another sailor coughs. A baby goat bleats from somewhere you sincerely hope is far away. A rat scurries across a beam. You hear it. You choose denial. Denial, after all, is free and surprisingly popular throughout maritime history. Long pause. You begin wondering, maybe this won't be so bad. Maybe tonight, you'll actually sleep. The ship rocks gently. The hammock sways. Your breathing slows. The ocean whispers beneath you. Then, a bell rings, loud, 3 times. The voices stop. Boots pound overhead. Someone shouts, "Storm coming." Chapter 2. Why sleeping during a storm was almost impossible. The first thing you notice is that everyone else notices first, before you hear the storm, before you feel the wind, before the first drop of rain splashes across the deck. The sailors have already changed. Conversations stop halfway through sentences. The laughter fades. The old men, those weathered veterans whose faces resemble driftwood more than flesh, look toward the horizon with expressions you don't particularly enjoy seeing. Nobody panics, which somehow feels even more unsettling, because panic is loud. Experience is quiet. One sailor reaches up and begins rolling another sail tighter. Another checks a rope with practiced hands, pulling each knot as though he's shaking hands with an old friend. Someone else secures loose barrels. A cook wedges iron pots against the galley wall. Even the ship herself seems to know. The cheerful creaking you've been listening to all day changes. The hull groans lower now, longer, like an old house preparing itself for a difficult winter. Above you, the sky darkens. Not the gentle gray of evening. This is something heavier. Clouds stack upon one another until daylight seems squeezed between them. The sea, which only moments ago shimmered a pleasant blue-green, turns the color of forged iron. It's remarkable how quickly the ocean changes its personality. 5 minutes ago, it invited you aboard. Now it's reconsidering. You climb onto the main deck. The wind greets you like an unpaid debt. Cold, sharp, determined, it steals your hat almost immediately. A sailor catches it without looking. Apparently, this happens often enough to qualify as routine. "Keep hold of everything," he says, "especially yourself." Comforting advice. You tuck the hat firmly beneath your arm. The rain arrives next, not as gentle drops, but sideways. You didn't know rain could travel sideways, apparently. The ocean enjoys teaching new lessons. Within seconds, your wool clothing feels twice as heavy. Your boots squish. Water trickles down your neck with malicious precision, somehow finding the exact space between your collar and your skin. It's as though every raindrop attended a seminar titled "Making Humans Miserable, Advanced Placement." Then, the first real wave strikes, not over the side, into it. The ship shudders. Every timber complains at once. You instinctively grab the nearest rope. Good decision. Because the deck tilts, not a little. Enough that every loose object suddenly develops ambitious travel plans. Buckets slide. Coils of rope snake across the planks. a chicken who until now seemed entirely unconcerned with maritime affairs, races across the deck, squawking absolute betrayal. You honestly can't blame it. One sailor calmly catches the bird under one arm without interrupting his work. You suspect this is not the strangest thing he's done today. Now here's something Hollywood rarely gets right. Storms at sea weren't usually dramatic because waves constantly crashed over the ship. They were terrifying because they never stopped. One wave, then another, hour after hour, sometimes day after day. Imagine standing on a city bus. Now imagine the driver is determined to break every traffic law ever written. Now imagine the bus occasionally climbs a 3-story hill before dropping straight back down. Now remove the brakes. Congratulations. You're getting close, the captain bellows orders. His voice somehow cuts through the wind. You don't know exactly what he says. It hardly matters. The crew knows. Lines tighten, sails shrink. Men climb the rigging. You look upward. Immediately regret looking upward. There, balanced on ropes thinner than your wrist, 30, maybe 40 feet above the deck. Sailors crawl like spiders. The mast sways beneath them. The entire ship rolls. One wrong grip, one wet rope, one gust of wind. The ocean receives another passenger. Safety harnesses? Not yet. Insurance? Also not. The retirement plan was largely theoretical. Eventually you're ordered below, partly because you're new, mostly because having inexperienced people wandering around during a storm creates unnecessary opportunities for tragedy. The hatch slams shut behind you. Instant darkness. Well, not complete darkness. Lanterns swing wildly overhead. That's somehow worse. The moving light makes the walls appear alive. Shadows stretch, shrink, leap across the curved beams. The room seems to breathe. You remind yourself, it's only physics. Your imagination disagrees. Down here. The storm sounds different. Above deck, you hear wind. Below deck, you hear the ship. Every plank groans. Every beam cracks. The hull twists. Water slams against the oak with the force of battering rams. Thud, thud, thud. Each impact echoes through your ribs. It's impossible not to wonder. Was that normal? Or was that the sound of your future becoming significantly shorter? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most sailors had no idea whether the ship was moments from sinking. Neither do you. There are no weather satellites, no radar, no weather apps politely informing you that heavy rain is expected in your area. Your weather forecast is basically, the sky looks angry. Scientific enough. The carpenter walks through the darkness carrying a lantern. Interesting fellow. You quickly learn that aboard a wooden ship. The carpenter wasn't just someone who built furniture. He was the ship's doctor. Not for people, for the ship. If a beam cracked, he repaired it. If water leaked, he plugged it. If the mast split, he prayed first, then repaired it. During storms, he became one of the busiest men aboard. Think of him as roadside assistance. Except the roadside is the Atlantic Ocean. And nobody can tow you. The smell changes. Earlier, it was unpleasant. Now, it's unforgettable. Wet oak, pitch, bilge water, sweat. Smoke, salt, and something sour lurking beneath everything else. Bilge water deserves special mention. Because it wasn't just seawater, it collected everything. Spilled soup, animal waste, rotting food, mud, dead rats, fish remains. whatever accidentally found its way between the planks. Imagine forgetting to clean your kitchen drain. For 6 months, then carrying it around beneath your bedroom. That was the bilge. Every time the ship rolled, the smell rolled with it, a moving cloud of historical regret. Your hammock waits, still hanging, still gently swaying. Although gently is becoming an increasingly generous description, the sailor beside you notices your hesitation. Sleep. You stare. In this? He nods. When you can. When I can. You don't sleep because you're tired. He shrugs. You sleep because later. You might not get the chance. That sentence stays with you. Centuries later, it still feels heavy. So you climb in. More gracefully this time. Progress. You wrap yourself tightly inside the canvas, almost like being folded into a giant cloth envelope. This wasn't merely for comfort, it kept you from rolling out. Mostly. Many sailors also tied the ends of their hammocks slightly higher than modern camping hammocks. It created a deeper cradle. The idea was simple. If the ship suddenly lurched, hopefully you stayed inside. Hopefully. History's least reassuring word. Then something strange happens. The harder the ship rolls, the steadier your hammock feels. At first, your brain can't understand it. But the hammock swings with the motion instead of fighting against it. It's like suspension in a modern car. The road can be rough. The seat absorbs part of the punishment. The sea is still trying to throw you across the room. But the hammock politely says, "Not today." No wonder sailors loved them. Beds nailed to the floor would have launched people like badly aimed catapults. Outside, the storm reaches full strength. The ship climbs, higher, higher. For one impossible moment, everything pauses, weightless, silent, then down. The bow crashes into the next wave with a boom so deep you feel it inside your chest before your ears. Water explodes against the hull, somewhere nearby. A barrel breaks free. Men shout. Boots pound overhead. A bell rings. Another order, another crash, another climb, another fall. Again, again, again. Time loses meaning. Storms do that. Minutes feel like hours. Hours disappear entirely. You attempt to close your eyes. The hammock rocks. Your body rocks. Your stomach objects. Vehemently. Modern cruise ships proudly advertise stabilization systems. This ship's stabilization system is hope. Unfortunately, hope does not prevent seasickness. A sailor across from you leans over the side of his hammock. You decide not to investigate further. Let's simply say, dinner has chosen freedom. The smell does not improve. Sleep comes in fragments. A minute here, 5 minutes there. Never deep, never peaceful. Every unfamiliar sound jolts you awake. Every crack makes you wonder whether the mast has snapped. Every shout sends your pulse racing. You begin to understand something historians rarely write about. Exhaustion wasn't unusual aboard wooden ships. It was permanent. Sleep wasn't something sailors enjoyed. It was something they stole. One small piece at a time, like thieves robbing the night itself. Hours pass. Or perhaps only one. The storm doesn't tell you. Finally, the motion softens. Not completely, just enough. The groaning becomes less desperate, the shouting fades. Someone laughs. A genuine laugh. Small, relieved, alive. You smile without realizing it. Funny how surviving something changes your definition of a good day. Yesterday, a good day meant sunshine. Today, it simply means the ship is still floating. You drift toward sleep once more. The hammock swings slowly, almost gently now. The rain fades into a distant whisper. The timbers continue their endless conversation, and somewhere above, the stars begin quietly returning to the sky. Chapter 3. The Night Watch, when sleep became a luxury. Just when you think, finally, you'll get some sleep. A bell rings. Once, then again. Its deep metallic voice rolls through the ship like a church bell heard through a dream. You don't know what time it is. You can't. There are no glowing numbers on a bedside table, no phone buzzing with a sleep-tracking app proudly informing you that you achieved 86% sleep efficiency. If someone had measured your sleep tonight, the app would probably have sighed dramatically before giving up. Around you, men stir inside their hammocks, not with the sluggish reluctance of someone waking for work on a Monday morning. More like machines restarting after a brief shutdown. One sailor swings himself from his hammock in a single practiced movement. Another pulls on damp boots that never really had a chance to dry. Someone mutters a sleepy prayer. Someone else coughs, a rough, chest-deep cough that sounds as though he's been borrowing air from the sea itself. Within moments, the dim berth deck, quiet only seconds before, becomes alive with movement. No one complains. Complaining doesn't shorten the watch. It only wastes precious energy. You blink into the lantern light. Your body feels strangely heavy, not because you've slept well, quite the opposite. You've slept just enough for your muscle to remember how tired they really are. It's a cruel trick the human body plays. 5 minutes of sleep can feel wonderful, until someone wakes you. Then it feels as though you've been robbed. The sailor beside you notices your expression. First voyage? You nod. He smiles, not unkindly. You'll stop counting the hours. That doesn't sound encouraging. You'll stop caring what hour it is. Somehow, that's even worse. You climb carefully from your hammock. By now, you've learned the technique. Sit, swing, stand. No spectacular collapse onto the floor this time. Progress. Small victories matter at sea, especially when larger victories usually involve not drowning. The hammock sways gently behind you. Hundreds of others do the same. Rows upon rows of empty canvas cradles swinging softly in the darkness. For a brief moment, they look almost ghostly, as though invisible sailors are still sleeping inside them. It's surprisingly beautiful, and just unsettling enough that you decide not to stare for too long. A narrow ladder leads upward. The wood beneath your boots is smooth, not because it's finely crafted, but because thousands of feet have worn it down over decades. Generations of sailors climbed these same steps, some laughing, some terrified, some never climbing back down. History has a habit of polishing wood and forgetting names. As you emerge onto the deck, the cold hits first. It slips through damp wool as though your clothing exists merely for decoration. The wind is calmer now, not gentle, just less interested in killing everyone than it was an hour ago. Clouds race across the sky. Between them, stars appear, disappear, return again. They seem impossibly bright. Out here, hundreds of miles from any city, there are no electric lights to compete with them. The night sky isn't something above you. It surrounds you. The horizon disappears into darkness until sea and sky become one endless black curtain. You suddenly understand why ancient sailors filled oceans with monsters. When you can't see what's out there, your imagination eagerly volunteers. The officer of the watch stands near the helm. His face is lit by a swinging lantern. not because lanterns are particularly flattering, but because walking into the captain's cabin to request better lighting was generally considered a poor career move. He looks over the crew, counts silently. Everyone has reported. Good, because every missing sailor creates an unpleasant question. Where did he go? And the sea is notoriously bad at answering questions. Now here's something modern life has largely forgotten. Ships never slept. Not really. No matter the hour. Someone had to be awake. Someone always watched the horizon. Someone checked the sails. Someone listened for changes in the wind. Someone kept the ship on course. The ocean doesn't pause because you're tired. It has absolutely no respect for your bedtime. A sailing ship functioned much like a living organism. One half rested while the other half worked. Then they traded places again and again, day after day, week after week, month after month. By the time a voyage ended, many sailors had forgotten what uninterrupted sleep even felt like. Imagine your fire department, your hospital, or an airport control tower. Someone is always on duty. Except instead of fluorescent lights and coffee machines, you have moonlight, salt spray, and a very real chance of falling into the Atlantic. The watch is divided, usually 4 hours. Sometimes less during difficult weather. 4 hours sounds manageable. Until you remember, that's only the working part. Before that, you may have hauled ropes for 6 hours. Afterward, you may be called back because the wind changed, or because another storm arrived, or because someone became injured, or because the captain suddenly decided that tonight would be an excellent opportunity to rearrange half the rigging. Captains occasionally possessed remarkable timing, not always appreciated by the crew. You'll receive your first assignment. Walk the deck, simple enough until you begin. The ship still rolls, less violently now, but enough that walking requires concentration. The deck rises beneath one foot, drops beneath the other. You quickly discover an unusual rhythm. Don't fight the ship, move with it. It's rather like dancing. If your dance partner weighs 600 tons and occasionally attempts to throw you overboard, one old sailor notices your awkward steps. He chuckles. You're walking like you're on land. "I am on," he interrupts. "No." He taps the deck with one boot. "You're on a ship." The distinction seems unnecessarily philosophical, until another wave rolls beneath the hull. You stumble. He doesn't. He moves with effortless balance, almost graceful. Years at sea had rewritten the way his body understood gravity. You begin copying him. Bent knees, relaxed posture, never locking your legs. The movement feels strange at first, then surprisingly natural. Your body learns quickly when the alternative is kissing the deck with your face. The deck itself is alive. Every rope hums quietly in the wind. The sails breathe overhead. Blocks and pulleys creak softly. Water trickles through tiny channels carved by countless storms. Somewhere high above, the mast gives a long, low groan. Not alarming, just conversational. Old ships constantly announced their opinions. The trick was learning which sounds meant everything was fine, and which ones meant everyone should become dramatically more interested in survival. Unfortunately, nobody had written that manual yet. The smell outside has changed too. Gone is much of the sour air below deck. Here, the world smells clean. Cold salt, wet oak, fresh wind, a faint trace of tar. You inhale deeply. For the first time today, your lungs feel happy. It's astonishing how pleasant air becomes after spending hours beside bilge water. Modern vacations often advertise oceanfront wellness experiences. This, technically, qualifies. Although the wellness part is open to debate, a sailor joins you near the rail. He's older. His beard carries more gray than brown. His hands resemble twisted rope, scarred, rough, permanently stained by pitch and salt. He rests one arm on the bulwark and gazes into the darkness. You hear it? You listen. Wind, water, rigging. I don't. He smiles. The sea talks. You wait. It tells you when it's changing. At first you think he's speaking poetically. Then you notice. The waves no longer strike the hull with the same rhythm. The wind whistles through different lines. The sails flap slightly less. Tiny changes, barely noticeable. Yet every experienced sailor seems to hear them instinctively, centuries before weather satellites. The ocean itself was the forecast. If you paid attention, hours drift by, slowly, almost dreamlike. You begin to understand why night watches played tricks on the mind. Darkness removes distance. Without familiar landmarks, the world shrinks. The lantern behind you, the mast above you, the black water beside the hull. Everything beyond that might as well belong to another universe. It's easy to imagine shapes moving just beyond sight. Many sailors did. Some swore they saw ghost ships. Others claimed to hear voices carried across empty water. Most historians blame exhaustion. The human brain, when deprived of sleep, becomes remarkably creative, especially after weeks of isolation, especially in darkness, especially when every shadow could simply be another wave, or something your ancestors would have called a sea spirit. You rub your eyes. For just a moment, you think you see someone standing at the bow, tall, perfectly still. Watching the horizon, you blink. The figure vanishes. Only a coil of rope. You laugh quietly to yourself. The sailor beside you notices. Seeing things? A little, he nods. Happens. That's all he says. No concern. No surprise. Apparently hallucinations ranked somewhere below splinters on the list of occupational hazards. Far below, the sea continues its endless conversation with the hull. Boom. Hiss. Boom. Hiss. A rhythm older than kingdoms. Older than maps. Older than nearly every story humans have ever told. And somewhere within that ancient rhythm, without quite realizing it, your breathing begins to match the waves. In. Out. In. Out. The ship rocks gently beneath your feet. The stars drift silently overhead for the first time since boarding. The ocean feels less like an enemy, not a friend. Never entirely a friend, but perhaps a force that simply exists. Indifferent, immense, patient, the kind of thing humanity has always tried to conquer and never quite managed. Behind you. The ship's bell rings again. The watch is changing. You feel as though you've only just begun. Because in truth, you have. The longest hours aboard a wooden ship weren't always the storm. Sometimes they were the quiet nights that followed, when exhaustion settled over the crew like fog, and one careless moment, one missed step, one drifting thought could send a sailor silently into the Black Sea, where no one would hear the splash. The first thing you learn about the ocean at night is that it steals certainty. During the day, you can judge distance. You can point to another ship. You can watch gulls circling overhead. You can see where the waves begin and where the horizon ends. At night, the world simply stops. Stand at the rail now. Go ahead. Rest your hands on the damp wood. The oak is cold beneath your fingers, polished smooth by thousands of sailors who stood in this exact spot, wondering exactly what you're wondering. How far down is it? You lean ever so slightly. Nothing. No reflection. No sparkle. Just blackness. It feels less like looking at water and more like staring into a hole cut into the universe. It's strangely hypnotic. You understand why officers constantly warned new sailors not to linger at the rail, not because the sea tempted people, because exhaustion did. After 20 hours of work, your mind begins playing dangerous games. The deck sways, your eyes struggle to focus, your body starts predicting movement before it happens. Sometimes it predicts incorrectly. You step expecting solid planks, only to find the ship has already rolled beneath you. One foot slips. Your stomach leaps into your throat. For a heartbeat, nothing exists except empty air. Then your hand finds a rope. You pull yourself back. Your heart races. No one laughs. Everyone has done it. Everyone. One sailor nods toward the rope still clutched in your hand. That's why they're everywhere. You hadn't noticed before. Now you do. Ropes aren't only for sails. Many become handholds, an invisible safety net stretching across the ship, not enough to prevent every accident, but enough to give tired hands something to trust. Modern workplaces often remind employees to take regular breaks, a noble idea, a healthy one. Here, the break is surviving until sunrise. Then perhaps, if fortune is feeling unusually generous, you might earn an hour or two inside your hammock. Perhaps. History rarely promised anything more. The officer quietly walks the deck, not inspecting the ship, inspecting the crew. He watches eyes, posture, movement, not because he enjoys making everyone nervous, because sleep has become another enemy. A sailor who falls asleep while standing watch isn't merely breaking a rule. He's gambling with every life aboard. Imagine hiring a security guard who sleeps while the building burns. That was the fear. One unseen reef, one approaching ship, one sudden shift in wind. A single sleepy moment could cost hundreds of lives. The punishments reflected that danger. Some captains were patient, others less so. Being caught asleep during watch might earn extra duties. It might earn a whipping. On certain naval vessels, repeated offenses could destroy a man's career forever. Harsh? Absolutely. But remember, the ocean already punished mistakes without hesitation. Captains simply preferred to do it first. A cloud drifts across the moon. The deck darkens. Remarkably, your hearing sharpens. You begin noticing sounds that daylight had buried beneath constant activity. The soft hiss of water racing along the hull, the tiny squeak of leather as a sailor adjusts his belt. The flutter of canvas high overhead, the rhythmic creak, creak, creak of timber flexing under pressure. It's almost musical. If orchestras were composed entirely of anxious lumber, then you hear something new. Scratch, scratch, scratch. From somewhere below your feet, you freeze. Another sailor smiles without looking up. The rats. Of course, the rats. Every ship had them, or nearly every ship. They arrived hidden inside cargo, barrels, sacks of grain, and quickly decided they had no intention of leaving. Frankly, from a rat's perspective, A wooden ship was paradise. Food, warmth, shelter, thousands of convenient hiding places, the occasional boot. Acceptable risk. You don't actually see one, not yet. Only hear tiny claws racing through spaces between beams. You imagine dozens, possibly hundreds. The sailor notices your expression. If you don't see them, they're seeing you. You sincerely wish he hadn't shared that thought. Cats occasionally sailed too, not because sailors adored adorable companions. Although many certainly did, cats earned their passage. Every rat caught meant fewer spoiled supplies. A good ship's cat became something of a celebrity, fed well, protected. Occasionally promoted to unofficial morale officer, some even appeared in sailors' journals more often than junior officers, which says surprisingly little about the cat, and rather a lot about those officers. You continue your slow patrol, one hand always touching something. A rope, a rail, a mast. You begin moving almost automatically. The ship rolls, your knees bend, the bow rises. You lean forward, the stern drops, you shift your weight. Without realizing it, you're learning the dance. The old sailor notices. There you are. What? You're walking like a sailor now. You glance at your boots. Nothing seems different. Everything is different. Your body has begun trusting the ship instead of fighting it. It's an odd feeling, like learning to ride a bicycle. One moment impossible, the next almost natural. Far above, someone coughs from the rigging. You look upward. A lone sailor sits perched on a yardarm, barely visible against the stars. Watching, listening, waiting. You wonder whether he's afraid. Perhaps he was. The first 100 times. Experience doesn't always remove fear. Sometimes it simply teaches you which fears deserve your attention. The wind freshens slightly, not enough to alarm anyone. Just enough for the sails to fill with a deeper breath. The entire ship responds. She leans, not violently, gracefully, like an old woman settling into a familiar chair. You smile. Hours ago, that movement terrified you. Now, it feels almost comforting. Funny how quickly humans adapt. Give us enough time, and we'll normalize almost anything. Even sleeping inside a floating forest during the middle of the Atlantic. Your stomach growls loudly. Apparently surviving storms burns considerable energy. Unfortunately, midnight isn't exactly prime dining time. The ship's biscuit tucked into your pocket has become questionable. You pull it free. It is roughly the color and texture of old bricks. Hardtack. One of history's most infamous foods. Calling it bread feels optimistic. Calling it edible depends entirely on your level of desperation. A nearby sailor notices your hesitation. He laughs. Dunk it. In what? Anything. He isn't joking. Water, soup, coffee, if you're fortunate enough to have any. Without soaking, the biscuit possesses all the tenderness of masonry. Many sailors joke that if the enemy ever ran out of cannonballs, they could simply fire hardtack instead. The damage would probably be similar. You bite carefully, crunch. Very carefully, crunch. You become increasingly grateful for possessing teeth. Some sailors weren't so lucky. Bad nutrition, disease, age, years of chewing food that fought back. Dental care at sea remained primitive. A ship's barber might pull a troublesome tooth, usually with alarming confidence. Pain relief consisted mainly of not thinking about it. a strategy that rarely impressed the Tooth. The hours continue sliding by. The sea grows calmer, not calm, never truly calm, just less impatient. Moonlight slips free from the clouds once again. Silver streaks spread across the waves. For the first time, you can actually see the ocean. Not all of it. No one ever sees all of it. Only the nearest swells, rolling endlessly beneath the hull like breathing mountains. Each wave lifts the ship gently, then lets her down again. Lift, fall, lift, fall. The rhythm is almost hypnotic. You begin to understand why some sailors claim they slept better aboard ship than on land. Not because conditions were comfortable, far from it, but because after enough weeks, stillness itself felt strange. Many veterans reportedly found quiet beds ashore unsettling. Without the familiar rocking, they couldn't drift off. Imagine spending years falling asleep on a moving train. Eventually, the station feels wrong. A faint orange glow appears low on the horizon. Not sunrise, not yet. Just the distant promise that night cannot last forever. You hadn't realized how desperately you'd been waiting for light. Darkness is exhausting. It forces your senses to work overtime. Every shadow demands investigation. Every unexpected sound becomes a mystery. Every mystery becomes another reason your heart beats just a little faster. The officer checks the sky, then the compass, then the sails. Routine, calm, methodical. Watching him, you realize something important. The best sailors rarely looked heroic. They looked patient. History often celebrates dramatic moments, the cannon fire, the storms, the battles. But ships survived because thousands of ordinary, careful decisions happened every single day. One knot tied correctly, one sail adjusted in time, one lookout paying attention, one exhausted sailor choosing to grip the rope 1 second longer. Civilizations crossed oceans. Not because of grand speeches, because ordinary people quietly kept doing difficult things. Again, and again, and again. The bell rings softly. Another half hour gone. Your eyelids feel heavier now. Your shoulders ache. Your boots seem somehow twice as heavy as when the watch began. And yet, without noticing, you've stopped thinking about your bed, stopped counting the hours, stopped wondering when the night will end. You've become part of the ship's rhythm, just another heartbeat inside a living wooden world. The sea no longer asks whether you're ready. It simply keeps moving. And so do you. There's a strange moment, just before dawn, not quite night, not quite morning. The sky hesitates, as though the sun itself is deciding whether it's worth getting out of bed today. You sympathize. If the sun had spent the night on this ship, it might have stayed under the horizon too. Your eyes wander east. At first, nothing. Only darkness wearing a slightly lighter shade of darkness. Then, almost too subtle to notice, a thin silver line appears where the sea meets the sky. No fanfare, no dramatic orchestra, just a quiet promise that you've survived another night. The sailors notice immediately. No one points, no one celebrates. After enough voyages, dawn becomes less of an event and more of a familiar co-worker arriving for the next shift. Still, you catch more than one weathered face looking toward the light just a little longer than necessary. Night is honest. It hides nothing from your imagination. Daylight returns things to reality. As the light grows stronger, the ship slowly reveals herself, and she looks tired. very tired. The sails hang heavy with rain. Every rope glistens with moisture. The deck is littered with puddles that reflect the pale morning sky. One barrel has broken loose during the storm and now rests against the bulwark, looking thoroughly embarrassed about the whole affair. A shattered bucket lies nearby. Several wooden pegs have snapped. One section of railing bears fresh splinter marks where a wave slammed against it during the night. Nothing catastrophic, just another page added to the ship's long autobiography. Wooden ships carried their history on their skin. Every scratch told a story. Every dent remembered a storm. Every repaired plank quietly announced, "We nearly didn't make it." The crew begins moving with renewed purpose. Storms don't clean up after themselves. Someone gathers loose ropes. Another checks every sail for tears. The carpenter appears once again, carrying his toolbox like an old family doctor making morning visits. He kneels beside a cracked beam, runs rough fingers across the wood, listens. Actually, listens. You watch with curiosity. He's tapping the timber gently with the handle of a hammer. Different sounds, different tones. Healthy wood speaks differently than damaged wood. Centuries before electronic sensors, experienced ears became the instruments. It's surprisingly impressive, like watching a piano tuner diagnose an entire ship. Nearby, a sailor carefully coils a long rope. You notice something. He isn't rushing, no wasted movement. Every loop is identical, neat, orderly. You ask why. He smiles. Because later, he holds up the finished coil. Someone might need it in a hurry. You nod, makes sense. Chaos has no place aboard a ship. The sea provides more than enough of it already. The smell changes again. Morning always changes the smells. The sharp scent of rain begins fading. Fresh salt air returns. Wet oak warms ever so slightly beneath the first sunlight. Smoke rises from the galley chimney. Breakfast, or something generously described as breakfast. The aroma drifts across the deck. Salted meat, porridge, perhaps dried peas if supplies remain generous. Nothing anyone would photograph for social media, unless the caption read, "Meals that build character," or perhaps 500 calories and 100% regret. Your stomach doesn't care. After the night's work, almost anything sounds appealing. Almost. The ship's cook appears carrying a large iron pot. Now, calling him a chef might raise expectations unfairly. He isn't creating culinary masterpieces. He's solving mathematical problems. How do you feed 200 hungry sailors using ingredients that have spent weeks inside damp barrels? The answer usually involved boiling everything together until individual flavors surrendered. Elegant? No. Effective? Mostly. You receive a wooden bowl. Steam curls upward. You peer inside. It's thick, grayish, suspiciously uniform. The sailor beside you grins. Don't ask. I wasn't going to. Good. He takes a bite. So much happier that way. You follow his example. The porridge tastes warm, salty, slightly smoky, and wonderfully alive compared to hardtack. You finish every spoonful. Amazing what exhaustion does to one's standards. As breakfast ends, something unexpected happens. The captain walks the deck, not dramatically, not shouting, simply observing. His eyes move across every rope, every mast, every sailor. You realize something. He's counting, not aloud, silently. Ships constantly counted things, barrels, cannons, sails, crew. Because oceans have an unfortunate habit of making things disappear. A missing rope can be replaced. A missing sailor usually cannot. Thankfully, this morning, everyone answers the count. A small blessing, but aboard a wooden ship. Small blessings were often the most valuable kind. The wind softens, the sea relaxes further, sunlight spills across the waves. Yesterday, those same waters looked like liquid iron. Now they glitter, bright, almost cheerful. It's astonishing how quickly the ocean changes its mood. Or perhaps it never changes. Only our perspective does. When storms arrive, we call it cruel. When a sea calms, we call it beautiful. The ocean simply continues being the ocean, entirely unconcerned with our opinions. An older sailor leans beside you. He has a face carved by decades of wind. One eyebrow has disappeared beneath an old scar. His beard is salted long before his hair. He notices you watching the horizon. Pretty? You nod. It is. He chuckles. That's how it gets you. You glance towards him. The sea? He nods slowly. Beautiful enough that people keep coming back. He lets the words hang in the air, then quietly adds, strong enough that many don't. Neither of you speaks for several moments. Some truths don't need improving. You notice the crew relaxing. Not much, just enough. Laughter returns. Someone hums while repairing a line. Two sailors exchange exaggerated stories about storms they've survived. Or perhaps storms they claim to have survived. Sea stories possess an unusual quality. The farther a sailor travels from the event, the larger the waves become. By the time he reaches a tavern, every storm has conveniently doubled in height. Every fish has become enormous. Every act of bravery somehow involved him personally. History remembers many heroic sailors. Taverns created considerably more. One particularly animated sailor gestures toward the horizon. I've seen waves taller than churches. His companion doesn't even look up. I've heard this one. They were. They get taller every year. The first sailor pauses. Memory grows. Apparently, you smile. Some jokes survive centuries remarkably well. Your body begins feeling strangely warm, not comfortable, heavy. The adrenaline that carried you through the storm has quietly packed its bags. Exhaustion finally catches up. Your eyelids become difficult to negotiate with. Blink, open, blink, open. Eventually, one blink lasts a little longer than intended. The older sailor nudges your shoulder. Not yet. You jerk awake. Sorry, he laughs. Don't apologize. He points toward your hammock below deck. Earn it first. That's another thing modern life often overlooks. Sleep feels different when you've truly earned it. Not because your phone battery died, not because you stayed up watching one more episode that somehow became 4, because every muscle has worked. Every joint aches. Your hands are blistered. Your back is stiff. Your clothes are damp. Your stomach is finally full. Your mind, for the first time in hours, has permission to stop listening for danger. The officer finally gives the order you've been hoping to hear. Watch relieved. 3 simple words. You don't think you've ever loved 3 words more. The fresh crew emerges from below deck, hair flattened, eyes still half asleep. They're beginning their day. Yours, for the moment, is ending. You exchange places almost wordlessly. No ceremony, no applause. Just another quiet rotation that has kept ships alive for centuries. You descend below deck once more. The familiar smells greet you. Tar, canvas, wood, a faint trace of smoke. Even the bilge seems slightly less offensive now. Perhaps it hasn't improved. Perhaps you're simply too tired to argue with it. Rows of hammocks sway gently once again, some already occupied, others waiting patiently. You find yours. It looks absurdly inviting. This same hammock that yesterday appeared awkward, primitive, almost laughable, now resembles the finest hotel suite on earth. Funny how perspective changes. Luxury is often nothing more than relief wearing a different outfit. You climb inside, no hesitation this time. The canvas embraces you like an old friend. Outside, the sea continues its endless breathing. The ship rocks with slow, practiced confidence. Above you, footsteps begin another watch. Voices drift faintly through the deck beams. Life aboard the ship continues, because it always must. No one pauses simply because you're asleep. Your eyes grow heavy. You think about home, about still ground, about quiet nights, about beds that don't swing from hooks. You wonder how long it will take before solid land itself begins to feel strange. The answer, you suspect, may surprise you. Your breathing slows. The hammock moves with the sea. Forward, indeed, back. Forward, back, like a cradle. Only this cradle floats upon an ocean vast enough to swallow empires. Somewhere above, the bell rings again. Not for you, for someone else. Another watch begins. Another sailor wakes. Another pair of tired boots crosses the deck. The ship never truly sleeps. She only dreams in shifts. And tonight, for a precious few hours, you finally get to dream with her. Chapter 4. Hammocks, the greatest bed you never wanted, you wake. Or perhaps you simply become aware again. Out here, there's a difference. Sleep aboard a wooden ship isn't a single, uninterrupted journey. It's more like borrowing tiny pieces of unconsciousness whenever the ocean decides you're allowed. Your eyes open. For a moment, you have absolutely no idea where you are. The ceiling is moving. No, you're moving. The ceiling is politely following along. Then the familiar creak. The slow rocking, the smell of damp canvas, and the distant footsteps overhead bring everything rushing back. Right. You're floating in the middle of an ocean that doesn't know or care that you'd quite like another 5 hours of sleep. You remain still, not because you're comfortable, because moving feels unnecessary. Your hammock rocks with slow, deliberate confidence. Forward, back, forward, back. It's almost impossible not to notice how closely the motion resembles being cradled. Perhaps that's why so many veteran sailors grew strangely fond of these simple strips of canvas. At first glance, they look primitive, a rectangle of heavy fabric, 2 ropes, 2 hooks, that's all. No springs, no pillows worth mentioning. Certainly no memory foam. The only thing this bed remembers is every sailor who has cursed it before eventually falling in love with it. When people imagine sleeping aboard an old sailing ship, they usually picture rows of rough wooden bunks. Hollywood certainly enjoys them. They look wonderfully dramatic, very photogenic, very wrong. Most ordinary sailors slept in hammocks, and once you understand why, you'll wonder why anyone ever bothered building beds at sea. Imagine placing an ordinary bed inside a ship. Now imagine the ship suddenly rolls 40 degrees to starboard. Congratulations, your mattress has become a launching platform. You are the projectile. Every wave would introduce you to the floor, or the wall, or another unfortunate sailor. Gravity aboard ship has a wonderfully flexible personality. The hammock solved all of that. Instead of fighting the movement, it surrendered to it. The canvas swung naturally with the ship's motion, rather than throwing you across the room. It carried you through each roll. Think of it like modern suspension on an off-road vehicle. The road can become rough. The seat absorbs the punishment. Except in your case, the road is the Atlantic Ocean. And the suspension occasionally smells like wet sheep. The old sailor in the hammock beside yours notices you staring thoughtfully at the canvas above your face. You've stopped hating it. "I suppose I have." He chuckles. "They all do." "Really?" He nods. Land feels strange after a while. You laugh. Surely he's exaggerating. Surely no one could spend months swinging through storms and eventually decide that solid ground is the unusual experience. Oh, how wonderfully optimistic you still are. History is filled with unexpected adaptations. Roman soldiers eventually preferred carrying 80 pounds of equipment because it made marching predictable. Medieval blacksmiths stopped noticing the heat of their forges. Lighthouse keepers learned to sleep through storms that would terrify everyone else. Humans possess an extraordinary ability. Given enough time, we normalize the absurd. Your brain quietly rewrites its own definition of normal. After several months aboard ship, stillness itself begins feeling suspicious. Many sailors, upon returning home, reportedly struggle to sleep in ordinary beds. The mattress refused to move. Their bodies waited for the familiar rocking. It never came. Imagine spending years living beside railroad tracks. Eventually, silence keeps you awake. A beam overhead groans softly, almost affectionately. You smile. Yesterday, that sound convinced you the ship was falling apart. Today, it feels reassuring, like an old grandfather clearing his throat before telling another story. Funny what exhaustion teaches. You finally climb from your hammock, not because you want to, because duty eventually wins every argument aboard ship. The deck beneath your boots feels strangely solid, not because the ship has stopped moving, because you've learned to move with it. You no longer notice every roll. Your knees bend instinctively. Your balance shifts without conscious thought. Your body has quietly enrolled in the University of Floating. Tuition paid entirely in bruises. Rows of hammocks surround you. Now that you're fully awake, you begin noticing details you overlooked before. Each one is slightly different. Some are patched repeatedly, others are newer. One carries careful stitching where torn canvas has been repaired. Another bears initials sewn into the edge. Simple letters, nothing fancy, yet somehow they transform anonymous canvas into something personal. Life aboard ship leaves remarkably little room for possessions. A knife, a wooden spoon, perhaps an extra shirt if fortune has smiled upon you. Maybe a small Bible, a letter from home. And your hammock, that was yours. Your tiny island of privacy inside a floating world shared with hundreds of strangers. Privacy. Now there's an amusing concept. Modern bedrooms often come with locks, curtains, nightstands, perhaps even scented candles. Your bedroom is approximately 20 inches away from someone else's nose. If your neighbor snores, you hear every masterpiece. If he talks in his sleep, congratulations. Tonight's entertainment has arrived. If someone develops a spectacular cough, everyone participates. Personal space aboard ship wasn't measured in feet. It was measured in optimism. One sailor sits nearby carefully repairing a small tear in his hammock using thick linen thread. His needle moves confidently through the canvas. You watch him work. Important. He glances up. Very. He pulls the repaired section tight. You trust this every night. Fair point. It's difficult to sleep peacefully while wondering whether your bed intends to resign halfway through the evening. The canvas itself surprises you. It's much heavier than expected. Rough, coarse. Strong enough to survive years of salt, moisture, and constant use. Comfort wasn't the priority. Survival was. The hammock had one job: keep the sailor inside. Everything else was considered a pleasant bonus. Now, here's something fascinating. Most sailors didn't simply throw themselves into the hammock and hope for the best. There was a technique. Of course there was. Sailors develop techniques for everything. The old sailor decides you're finally ready to learn. He gestures toward the empty hammock opposite yours. Watch. He grips the canvas, pulls it slightly outward, sits directly in the center. Then, in one smooth motion, he swings both legs inside while leaning backward. No wobbling, no spinning, no dramatic collapse worthy of applause. Effortless. You nod confidently. I can do that. His smile widens. Oh? You approach your own hammock, grip both sides, sit carefully. So far, excellent. Then, you attempt the graceful leg swing. The hammock immediately rotates 90 degrees. One boot points toward the ceiling. The other mysteriously disappears beneath the canvas. For one unforgettable moment, you resemble an overturned beetle reconsidering every decision that led here. The old sailor watches patiently. Eventually he reaches over, gently steadies the hammock, and says the words every beginner secretly dreads. Happens every time. Several nearby sailors laugh, not cruelly, more like older brothers watching someone repeat a family tradition. Apparently, embarrassing yourself while entering a hammock is practically a maritime rite of passage. Centuries change. Human dignity remains delightfully fragile. Once settled properly, you immediately understand the trick. The canvas wraps around your shoulders, supports your back, keeps your weight centered. It's surprisingly secure. The hammock doesn't feel like something you're lying on. It feels like something gently holding you. No wonder sailors preferred them. During rough weather, being hugged by your bed suddenly sounds like excellent engineering. Above, the ship rolls gently. Your hammock answers with a slow, graceful swing. Left, right. Left, right. Your breathing follows. Without trying. Without thinking. The motion is almost hypnotic. Today we'd probably spend hundreds of dollars for a wellness retreat promising this kind of relaxation. Back then, it simply came free with the constant possibility of shipwreck. Perspective really is everything. A young sailor nearby mutters something in his sleep. Across the room, another quietly snores. Someone farther aft begins humming a tune too softly to recognize. The carpenter's hammer taps rhythmically somewhere beyond the bulkhead. The ship herself continues whispering through every timber. Creak, sigh, knock, groan. You realize something. This isn't silence, not even close. And yet, compared to modern life, compared to traffic, phones, notifications, televisions, engines, the sounds aboard ship feel almost natural. Every noise belongs here. Nothing is artificial. Nothing demands your attention. It simply exists. Like rain falling outside your bedroom window. Perhaps that's another reason sailors eventually slept so deeply. not because life became easier, but because the rhythm of the ship became part of them. Their heartbeat quietly synchronized with oak, canvas, wind, and sea. You close your eyes for just a moment, not to sleep, simply to listen. The hammock rocks gently beneath you. Somewhere above, a gull cries in the distance. The ocean breathes against the hull. The entire ship feels less like a machine and more like a living creature carrying everyone safely across an endless wilderness. For all its dangers, for all its discomfort, for all its smells that would make a modern hotel inspector faint dramatically, there is something undeniably comforting about this floating wooden world. Perhaps home isn't always the place where life is easiest. Sometimes home is simply the place whose sounds your heart has learned to recognize. And before long, you'll discover that this humble strip of canvas wasn't merely a bed during storms. It became a life-saving invention. During battle, it became armor. And when the sea finally claimed one of its own, it became something far more solemn. A sailor's final blanket, just as you begin thinking, maybe, just maybe, you finally figured out life aboard this ship. The whistle shrieks, sharp, piercing, impossible to ignore. Around you, dozens of sailors instantly sit upright, not gradually, not with the slow reluctance of someone snoozing an alarm 3 times. Immediately. It's almost unsettling. You blink. Did they even hear the whistle? Or had years of habit taught their bodies to wake before their minds? Either way, within seconds, the peaceful berth deck transforms into organized chaos. Hammocks sway, boots thump against planks. Men duck beneath hanging canvas. Someone laughs after narrowly avoiding a collision. Another mutters something that would probably make a priest develop an unexpected interest in soap. Morning has officially begun. You remain lying there for another heartbeat. Just one. The hammock continues rocking gently. Outside, waves brush against the hull with comforting familiarity. It would be so easy to stay, to pretend you didn't hear the whistle, to become one with the canvas forever. A tempting idea. Unfortunately, the Royal Navy had never shown much enthusiasm for naps taken during working hours, nor had merchant captains, nor pirates. The ocean, surprisingly, was unanimous on this subject. The old sailor across from you notices. Move, you sigh. I was appreciating the engineering. He raises an eyebrow. You can appreciate it while standing. Fair enough. You climb from the hammock and notice something curious. Nobody leaves theirs hanging, not one. Within moments, sailors begin untying ropes with practiced hands. Canvas disappears from the room astonishingly fast. Roll, fold, tie, stack. Each movement happens almost automatically. It's less like cleaning a bedroom, and more like watching a military drill refined over generations. You ask why. The answer arrives from 3 different sailors at once. Space, drying, safety. All correct. Below deck wasn't merely a sleeping area. It was everything. Dining hall, living room, hospital, workshop, storage space, sometimes even a prison. Leaving hundreds of hammocks hanging would make moving through the deck nearly impossible. Imagine trying to push a shopping cart through a forest of swings. Now imagine doing it while carrying a cannonball. Efficiency mattered. Every square foot aboard ship had multiple jobs, much like a modern studio apartment. except with considerably more cannons. The hammocks are rolled tightly into long cylinders, then tied neatly with their own cords. At first glance, they resemble oversized sleeping bags, or perhaps very determined burritos. You attempt your first roll. It begins well, then somehow grows wider at one end, thinner at the other. The finished result resembles an unusually confused snake. The old sailor looks at it, looks back at you. Interesting. Is that good? It's unique. You suspect unique is being used very generously. He unties the entire thing, shows you again. Keep it tight. Why? So it stays dry. Simple answer. Very important reason. Dryness aboard a wooden ship was almost mythical. Everything became damp. Clothes, blankets, boots, wood, rope. Even the air itself felt permanently soaked. Salt water had an astonishing talent. It found every crack, every seam, every forgotten corner. If moisture had a favorite hobby, it was moving aboard ships. A wet hammock wasn't merely uncomfortable, it became heavier, colder, more likely to rot. Canvas weakened over time, mildew spread, and trying to sleep inside damp cloth on a chilly Atlantic night. Well, imagine wrapping yourself in a cold beach towel after swimming in October, then doing it every night for 6 months. Luxury. The boatswain walks past inspecting the neatly rolled hammocks. Some receive approving nods. Others are quietly adjusted. One sailor's roll is noticeably loose. The boatswain taps it with one finger. Again, no shouting, no lecture. The sailor immediately understands. Unties it, rolls it again. Better this time. Tiny details mattered. At sea, little mistakes had an irritating habit of growing into large ones. Now here's something remarkable. The hammock's day wasn't over, not even close. It wasn't merely stored. It became part of the ship itself. You follow the crew onto the upper deck, carrying your tightly rolled canvas. Rows of wooden netting line the ship's rails, one by one. The sailors place their hammocks inside. You watch dozens of white canvas rolls disappear into the netting until the entire rail resembles an enormous padded wall. You frown. What are we doing? The older sailor smiles. Building armor. Armor. With beds? It sounds ridiculous until you think about it. Wooden ships fought with cannonballs. Cannons shattered timber. When oak exploded, it didn't merely break. It produced thousands of razor-sharp wooden splinters, huge ones, tiny ones, some as long as swords, others as thin as needles. Historians often point out something surprising. Splinters killed or injured enormous numbers of sailors during naval battles, not the cannonballs themselves. The wood. Imagine standing inside a building. When someone fires a wrecking ball through the wall, the flying bricks might hurt you more than the ball. Ships behaved much the same way. Those tightly packed hammocks absorbed part of that violence. They softened impacts, caught splinters, reduced flying debris. Were they perfect? No, nothing aboard a wooden ship was. But countless sailors owed their lives to the very bed they'd complained about the night before. Not bad for a strip of canvas. Your expensive mattress has many impressive features. Becoming battlefield protection isn't usually listed among them. The older sailor pats one of the rolled hammocks. See? You nod slowly. I never thought a bed could stop a splinter. He grins. Neither did the splinter. The ship continues gliding through gentle swells. Sunlight dances across polished brass fittings. Far overhead, sails billow softly against an impossibly blue sky. If someone painted this scene, Modern audiences might call it romantic, peaceful, even idyllic. You know better now. You've smelled the bilge. You've survived the storm. You've learned that beauty and hardship often occupy the same deck. History rarely separates them. A group of younger sailors gathers near the bow. One proudly demonstrates an elaborate knot. Another immediately points out 3 flaws. Within moments, half a dozen opinions fill the air. Apparently, sailors possess remarkably strong feelings about rope. Centuries later, people argue online about smartphones. Back then, they argued about knots. Different century, same species. The conversation soon drifts toward hammocks. One sailor insists his hangs better near the center of the berth deck. Another claims sleeping near the bow produces a gentler motion. A third argues the exact opposite. The debate becomes unexpectedly passionate. You quietly realize something. Humans can turn absolutely anything into a matter of personal preference. Coffee, pillows, weather, parking spaces. Apparently, hammock locations too. You ask the oldest sailor where he prefers sleeping. He scratches his beard thoughtfully. Away from the snorers, the group laughs, finally. A problem that has survived every century unchanged. The wind freshens. The ship heels slightly. You instinctively widen your stance. No stumble this time. The older sailor notices. Without saying anything, he smiles. Only yesterday, every roll threatened to throw you across the deck. Now, your body adjusts before your mind even notices. The ship is teaching you, patiently, relentlessly, one wave at a time, as the afternoon drifts onward. You begin seeing hammocks differently. Yesterday, they were simply places to sleep. Today, they're engineering, their storage, their safety equipment, their personal property, their battlefield protection. Remarkably, one humble strip of canvas performed more jobs than many modern pieces of furniture combined. Efficiency wasn't fashionable aboard ship. It was survival. If an object couldn't serve multiple purposes, someone eventually stopped carrying it. Space was simply too precious. You run one hand across the rough canvas of your rolled hammock. It feels familiar already, not soft, not luxurious, but dependable. And perhaps that's more valuable. Luxury impresses, dependability saves lives. Out here, you'll choose the second every time. The afternoon sun begins slipping westward. Long shadows stretch across the deck, somewhere below. The cook has started preparing the evening meal. The comforting smell of smoke drifts lazily upward. Nearby, the carpenter finishes another repair and quietly packs away his tools. The ship seems healthy once again, scarred, weathered, but ready, much like her crew. You glance once more at the rows of rolled hammocks lining the rail. From a distance, they look almost identical, anonymous, interchangeable. But you know better now. Each one belongs to someone. Each carries sweat, memories, repairs stitched by tired hands, perhaps even letters tucked secretly inside. Every roll of canvas represents another life crossing the ocean, another family waiting somewhere beyond the horizon, another story still being written. And not every story will reach its final chapter on land. As evening approaches, the hammocks will return below deck, hung once again between worn wooden beams, waiting patiently, ready to cradle exhausted sailors after another endless day. But before night falls, you'll discover something few people today ever consider. What exactly did sailors wear to bed when they never really knew whether they would wake to a calm morning or to a desperate cry of all hands on deck? There is one question you haven't asked yet, not because it isn't important, because your mind has been occupied with rather more immediate concerns, like remaining alive. But now, as another evening settles over the Atlantic, you notice something curious. No one seems to be changing into night clothes, no pajamas, no linen sleeping shirts, no comfortable slippers waiting beside a neatly made bed. Just the same damp wool jackets, the same loose shirts, the same worn trousers, the same boots. You look around once more. Surely someone is preparing for bed. Surely the older sailor catches your puzzled expression before you even speak. Looking for a bedroom? You grin. Something like that. He laughs quietly. This is it. Modern bedtime has become something of a ceremony. You brush your teeth, wash your face, perhaps read a chapter of a book, maybe scroll through your phone for 15 minutes, which mysteriously becomes an hour. Adjust the pillows, turn off the lights, climb beneath clean blankets, complain that one foot is somehow both too warm and too cold at the same time. History watches this routine with considerable amusement, because aboard a wooden sailing ship, bedtime lasted approximately 30 seconds. You worked until someone told you to stop. You climbed into your hammock. You slept if fortune smiled upon you. Then you woke and started working again. Simple, not comfortable, but simple. You ask one of the younger sailors, "So, you sleep in your clothes?" He shrugs as though you've asked whether the sky is blue. Most nights. Why? This time, several sailors answer at once. You'll be called. You'll be cold. You'll be wet. You'll be needed. Short answers, perfect answers. The sea had an irritating habit of interrupting sleep. A sudden squall, a snapped rope, a shifting wind, a damaged sail, an approaching vessel, a fire, a man overboard. Any one of these could send the cry echoing through the ship. All hands! That wasn't a suggestion. It wasn't even really an order. It was reality arriving unexpectedly. Every second mattered. A sailor struggling into trousers while everyone else hauled lines above deck. Was a sailor arriving too late, so you slept ready. Ready. It's a small word, yet it governed almost every aspect of life at sea. Your boots stayed nearby. Your knife remained within reach. Your clothing stayed on. Not because anyone particularly enjoyed sleeping inside damp wool. Quite the opposite. Wool has many admirable qualities. Softness is not generally among them, especially after several weeks soaked with salt water. You run your hand across your sleeve. The fabric feels stiff. Tiny crystals of dried salt have formed between the fibers. The cloth scratches against your skin. Your shoulders ache. Your back protests. The shirt probably hasn't been properly washed in. You decide not to finish that calculation. Some mysteries improve with age. Others simply become depressing. The older sailor notices you rubbing the fabric. Gets softer. When? He thinks for a moment. Eventually. You aren't entirely convinced. Now, you might wonder, why not simply change into dry clothes before sleeping? Excellent question, assuming, of course, you actually owned dry clothes. Most ordinary sailors possessed remarkably little. Perhaps 2 shirts, sometimes only 1. 1 pair of trousers, a jacket, a cap. A blanket if they were fortunate. That was often the entire wardrobe. Today, many of us need larger closets. Back then, A small sea chest held almost everything a sailor owned. If you lost that chest overboard, you had effectively lost your entire world. The sea chest sits beneath a nearby beam, solid oak, iron straps, simple lock. You kneel beside it while its owner opens the lid. Inside, everything has its place. A carefully folded spare shirt, a sewing kit, a Bible wrapped in cloth, a small wooden pipe, a tiny leather pouch containing coins. Several letters tied together with faded string. The sailor notices your eyes resting on them. He smiles softly. My wife. He doesn't say anything else. He doesn't need to. Letters were precious, not because paper was rare, because voices were. A letter carried someone's handwriting, someone's thoughts, someone's hope. Some sailors read the same letter dozens, perhaps hundreds, of times during a voyage, until the folds wore thin, until the ink faded, until every word became part of memory, long before photographs filled our phones. A single page of ink could keep loneliness at bay. The sailor carefully places the letters back inside, almost reverently, then closes the lid. The conversation ends. Some memories prefer silence. Nearby, another sailor sharpens a small knife, not dramatically, just methodically. The blade catches the lantern light. You glance toward him. Do you always sleep with that? He nods. Mostly. For protection, he smiles. No. He slices cleanly through a frayed piece of rope. For this, you blink. A rope? A tangled line can kill you faster than an enemy. He slips the knife back into its sheath. Out here, knives weren't symbols of violence. They were tools, essential ones. Need to cut a fouled rope? Knife? Open cargo? Knife. Prepare food? Knife. Repair canvas? Knife. Free yourself if rigging trapped your leg during a storm? Definitely. Knife. Most sailors carried one much as modern people carry keys. Hopefully unnoticed, occasionally indispensable. As evening deepens, the temperature begins falling. Not dramatically, just enough for damp clothing to remind everyone that water is remarkably good at stealing warmth. The wind slips through every tiny gap in your collar, across your wrists, around your neck. You instinctively pull the jacket tighter. The older sailor notices. Cold. A little. He nods towards the sea. It always wins. An odd statement. Yet somehow, entirely accurate. The ocean possesses infinite patience. It doesn't rush. It simply waits. Eventually, everything becomes damp. Everything becomes salty. Everything becomes weathered, including people. One of the younger sailors yawns loudly. Another immediately yawns too. Within moments, half the berth deck seems infected. Apparently, yawning has crossed oceans for centuries. Human beings remain wonderfully predictable. The cook appears briefly, carrying several mugs. Steam curls upward. Not coffee tonight. Warm broth, thin, simple, comforting. You wrap cold fingers around the wooden cup. Heat spreads slowly into your hands. Sometimes luxury isn't expensive. Sometimes luxury is simply warmth. The broth disappears surprisingly fast. Hunger aboard ship has a remarkable ability to improve every recipe. The cook watches empty bowls returning. Good? One sailor nods enthusiastically. Another says, I couldn't identify any of it. The cook grins proudly. Exactly. Laughter rolls through the berth deck. For a moment, the ship feels less like a workplace and more like a home. Not because conditions have improved, because shared hardship has quietly become companionship. Historians often describe naval discipline. Merchant trade, rigging, navigation, cannons. Those things matter. But something else mattered too. People. Months at sea demanded community. You depended on the man beside you. He hauled the same ropes, shared the same storms, heard the same groaning timbers in the middle of the night. If he laughed, you laughed too. If he stumbled, you reached out, because tomorrow it might be your turn. Ships crossed oceans on sails and wind, but they survived because tired people kept choosing one another. The lantern beside your hammock burns lower now. The flame dances behind slightly smoked glass. Its light turns the canvas a warm amber color. The rows of hammocks slowly fill once more, one after another, like birds returning to familiar branches at sunset. Canvas creaks softly. Ropes tighten. Someone sighs with relief the moment they lie down. Another mutters a sleepy prayer. A third quietly whispers goodnight to no one in particular, or perhaps to everyone. You climb into your own hammock. This time, no awkward spinning, no spectacular failure. You've learned. The canvas catches your weight perfectly. Outside, the ship rolls with slow confidence. Inside, the hammock answers every movement with a gentle sway. You pull your coarse blanket higher across your shoulders. The wool scratches slightly against your chin. Oddly enough, you hardly notice anymore. Above, footsteps continue. The next watch has begun. The ship never truly sleeps. She only lends sleep to her crew. One sailor rests. Another climbs the rigging. One dreams. Another stands at the helm beneath the stars. One closes weary eyes. Another scans the black horizon for danger. It is a quiet exchange, repeated every day, for months, sometimes years. You close your own eyes. The lantern flickers one last time before someone turns it lower. Darkness gathers gently. The familiar chorus begins once again. The deep sigh of oak, the whisper of waves, the distant flap of canvas, the soft breathing of dozens of exhausted men. It is not silence. It is something better. It is the sound of survival, and somewhere far beyond the hull, beyond the black water, beyond the endless horizon, another storm is already forming. It has no idea who you are. It doesn't know your name. It doesn't know about the letters tucked inside your seat chest, or the knife beneath your blanket, or the hammock gently carrying you through another borrowed night. The storm simply exists, patiently gathering strength, waiting, as storms always have. For now, you sleep, because tomorrow, the ocean will ask everything of you once again. There's an old saying among sailors. The sea doesn't care. It doesn't care whether you're brave. It doesn't care whether you're frightened. It certainly doesn't care how much experience you have. The ocean doesn't negotiate. It doesn't hate you. It doesn't love you. It simply continues doing what oceans have done for billions of years, moving. And tonight, it's moving with purpose. You wake before anyone calls your name, not because you're well rested, because something feels wrong. At first, you can't explain it. Your hammock still rocks gently. The familiar smell of damp canvas still hangs in the air. The ship still whispers through her timbers. Everything seems ordinary, yet your body insists otherwise. Perhaps it's instinct. Perhaps it's the tiny changes you've unconsciously learned over the past weeks. Or perhaps the ship herself is trying to tell you something. Then you notice the rhythm has changed. Yesterday, the hammock drifted like a cradle. Forward, back, tonight. It hesitates. One swing is longer than the next. The following one stops abruptly. The movement feels uncertain, almost cautious, like a horse sensing danger long before its rider notices. Above your head, the mast gives a deep, drawn-out groan. Not the cheerful complaints you've come to recognize. This sound is lower, heavier. It seems to travel through every beam of the ship before finally reaching your chest. You don't merely hear it. You feel it. The old sailor opens one eye. He doesn't even sit up. He simply listens for nearly 10 seconds. Neither of you speaks. Finally, he quietly says, "Pressure's dropping." You blink. You can tell? He smiles without opening his eyes. "My knees can." Long before weather stations, long before barometers became common aboard every vessel. Many sailors trusted their own bodies. Old injuries often ached before storms. Scarred joints stiffened. Broken bones remembered changes in air pressure better than some instruments. Whether every story was true, historians still debate, but sailors believed it, and sometimes belief alone changes how people prepare. Another groan rolls through the hull. This time, several men open their eyes. No orders have been shouted, no alarm has been raised. Yet the berth deck has quietly become awake. Nobody panics. You've learned that's never a good sign. Experienced sailors become quieter, not louder. Someone climbs from his hammock. He doesn't bother lighting another lantern. Instead, he walks toward the hatch and disappears above deck. He wants to see the sky. Or perhaps confirm what everyone already suspects. You wait. The silence stretches. Then, he returns. Only 2 words. Black clouds. Nobody asks another question. Nobody needs to. It's remarkable how much information can fit inside 2 simple words. Black clouds. They mean wet ropes, reduced visibility, cold rain, hard labor, missed sleep, maybe damaged sails, maybe broken masts, maybe something much worse. You climb carefully from your hammock. The deck beneath your boots already feels different. The ship rises, then pauses, before settling again, almost as if she has begun climbing invisible hills beneath the water. You recognize the motion immediately. Long swells. The storm is still far away, but its fingerprints have arrived. You make your way toward the ladder. The old sailor stops you. "Hold the rail." You nod politely. "No." His voice grows firmer. "Always hold the rail." He reaches past you and grips the polished wooden handrail. Every time. It sounds almost excessive, until the ship suddenly drops. Not dramatically, just enough. Your feet leave the step for a fraction of a second. Your stomach performs a maneuver normally reserved for elevators descending too quickly. Without the railing, you would have met the floor considerably faster than intended. The old sailor nods. The sea likes teaching. Outside, the world feels smaller, much smaller. Clouds have swallowed nearly every star. Only a few stubborn points of light remain overhead. The moon has disappeared completely. The wind carries a different smell now, sharper, colder, almost metallic. Rain has its own scent. So does lightning, even before the first drop falls. The air announces what's coming. The officer stands near the helm, studying the western horizon. You follow his gaze. At first, nothing. Then, you notice it. A line, dark, perfectly straight, stretching across the horizon. It almost resembles distant mountains. Except mountains don't move. This does, slowly, patiently, toward you. You've probably seen thunderstorms approaching across a city. Dark clouds rolling over rooftops, streetlights flickering on beneath them. Now remove the city. Replace buildings with endless water. Replace roads with waves. Replace the comforting knowledge that you can simply drive home, with the realization home is the thing floating beneath your feet. Suddenly, storms become considerably more personal. A boatswain blows his whistle. The sound slices cleanly through the wind. Immediately, the crew begins moving. No hesitation, no confusion. Every sailor already knows where he belongs. You stand still for one awkward second. The older sailor gently nudges your shoulder. Move. Where? He grins. Anywhere useful. It's surprisingly good advice. Storm preparation resembles a carefully rehearsed dance. Loose barrels are secured. Extra lines are coiled. Lanterns are checked. Hatches are fastened tightly. Every object capable of becoming tomorrow's flying projectile is tied down. Because storms possess a fascinating hobby, turning ordinary household items into dangerous missiles. A bucket becomes a battering ram. A wooden spoon becomes surprisingly enthusiastic. Even a loose shoe develops remarkable ambition. Below deck, the cook wedges iron pots tightly against the galley wall. Yesterday's dinner nearly escaped during the last storm. He has no intention of repeating the experience. He notices you watching. Soup's difficult enough without chasing it. You laugh. He doesn't. Apparently. He's entirely serious. Nearby, two sailors begin lowering the largest sails. This surprises you. Wouldn't you want more sail during strong winds? Quite the opposite. Imagine holding an umbrella during a hurricane. Now, imagine the umbrella weighs several tons. Too much sail catches too much wind. Too much wind can snap masts. A broken mast isn't merely inconvenient. It can destroy the ship. So captains often reduced sail long before the worst weather arrived. Slowly, carefully, respectfully, the sea appreciated humility. The first cold drop lands on your cheek, then another, then 5. Within moments, rain begins falling steadily, not heavily, not yet, almost politely, like someone knocking before entering. You know better now. Storms often begin with excellent manners. The sea changes color first. Blue fades into gray. Gray becomes charcoal. The waves lose their sparkle. The horizon begins dissolving into mist. It's astonishing how quickly the world becomes monochrome, as though someone quietly removed every cheerful color from existence. A sailor beside you pulls his coat tighter. Without looking away from the sea, he quietly says, "Listen." You do. At first, only wind, then far away, very far away. A deep rumble, not thunder, not exactly. The sound arrives slowly. Rolling across the water, it almost resembles distant cannon fire, except no battle waits beyond the horizon, only weather. The ocean has begun speaking in a deeper voice. Lightning flashes. Briefly, the clouds glow white from within, not a dramatic fork striking the sea, just a silent pulse hidden inside the storm itself. For one heartbeat, the entire horizon becomes visible. Towering walls of cloud, layer upon layer, like mountains built from smoke. Then darkness returns. You realize something unsettling. The storm is much larger than you imagined. You're not sailing into one cloud. You're sailing beneath an entire moving sky. The captain finally speaks. His voice isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. Every man nearby falls silent. "We'll meet it before nightfall," No speeches, no dramatic encouragement, simply a fact. The crew nods. Work continues. You find that strangely comforting. Panic never repaired a sail. Experience sometimes could. Hours pass. The rain grows colder. The wind grows stronger. The ship leans farther with every gust. You no longer hear individual ropes. Now the entire rigging sings together, a low, endless hum. Thousands of fibers stretched almost to their limit. It sounds haunting, like a giant invisible choir suspended above the deck. Beautiful. If you ignore the fact that every note is produced by enormous physical forces, trying very hard to rearrange your life. Your hands grip the wet rail. The wood feels alive beneath your fingers. You realize you're no longer standing on a ship. You're standing on a living thing. Every plank bends. Every mast flexes. Every rope stretches. Nothing remains rigid. That flexibility, oddly enough, is exactly what keeps everyone alive. Oak survives storms not because it's unbreakable, because it knows how to bend. Humans might do well to remember that too. The first truly enormous wave appears just before sunset. At first, you mistake it for the horizon itself. Then, the horizon begins rising. Slowly, impossibly. The ship starts climbing. Higher, 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 until all you can see ahead is water, a mountain of moving water. The bow reaches the crest. For one impossible heartbeat, everything becomes still. The wind pauses, the rain seems suspended, even your breathing stops. Then, the ship tips forward, and the ocean disappears beneath you. Your stomach follows it. The ship falls, not gently, not gracefully. She drops. Your stomach seems determined to remain somewhere near the top of the wave, while the rest of you follows the deck downward. Then boom, the bow slams into the sea. The impact races through every timber, through every mast, through every rope, through your boots, through your knees, straight into your spine. For one dizzying second, you honestly believe the ship has struck solid ground. But there is no ground, not for hundreds, perhaps thousands of feet below. Only water, an impossible amount of water. The sea explodes over the bow. A white wall rushes toward you. Not a splash, not a spray. A moving building made entirely of freezing salt water. Down! Someone shouts. You throw yourself against the deck just as the wave crashes over the ship. The force steals your breath. Ice-cold water pounds across your back. Your fingers tighten around the nearest rope with every bit of strength you possess. For several endless seconds, you cannot see. You cannot hear. You cannot even tell which way is up. The world has become water. Then, as suddenly as it arrived, the sea rushes away again. Water pours through the deck scuppers in foaming rivers. You cough, blink the salt from your eyes. Every inch of clothing clings to your body. Your hat is gone. You don't bother looking for it. The Atlantic has claimed another souvenir. The old sailor beside you spits seawater over the rail. First green sea. You stare. Green? He laughs despite everything. They call it a green sea when the whole wave comes aboard. You look behind you. The deck is still ankle deep in water. If this is considered normal, you begin wondering what sailors considered unusual. The answer arrives almost immediately. Another wave, larger. You begin noticing something curious. Nobody stands upright unless they absolutely must. Every sailor moves with bent knees. One hand gripping a rope, the other always searching for the next handhold. The ship has transformed into a giant puzzle. Every step requires planning. Where will the deck tilt? Which rope can support your weight? Which barrel might suddenly decide to become airborne? It feels less like walking, and more like climbing across the back of a living whale. A younger sailor hurries across the deck, carrying a coil of line. Halfway there, the ship rolls violently. His boots lose their grip. He slides several feet. The rope spills across the planks. Before you can react, two nearby sailors grab him. One catches his arm. The other catches the rope. Within seconds, everyone is moving again. No shouting, no blame, just practice teamwork. Later, when the storm has passed, someone will undoubtedly tease him about it, but not now. Storms are no place for pride. The boatswain's whistle shrieks again. Its piercing note somehow cuts through wind that sounds capable of tearing trees from mountains. Orders fly across the deck. Ease that line. Secure the hatch. Reef it lower. You understand, perhaps, half the words. It hardly matters. The crew understands all of them. Now, here's something remarkable. Sailors rarely tried to overpower the sea. That would be absurd. Instead, they constantly adjusted. Too much sail, reduce it. Too much strain, shift it. Too much water, pump it. Every action acknowledged the same truth. You cannot defeat the ocean. You can only persuade your ship to survive it. Rain lashes your face hard enough to sting. Tiny drops become needles driven sideways by the wind. You instinctively turn your head. Immediately, the older sailor nudges your shoulder. Keep watching. Why? Storms like surprises. You glance back toward the sea. He's right. The next wave is already arriving. Hours pass, or perhaps minutes. Time behaves strangely inside storms, without sunlight, without stars, without peaceful moments to separate one memory from the next. Everything blurs together. Only effort remains. Pull, brace, hold, repeat. The captain has ordered nearly every unnecessary sail taken in. The ship now carries only enough canvas to maintain control. Too little sail, and she cannot steer. Too much. And the wind may snap the masts clean in two. It is a delicate balance. Imagine trying to ride a bicycle downhill during a hurricane while carrying a wardrobe. Now imagine making tiny steering corrections with ropes instead of handlebars. Somehow, people managed for centuries. The sea continues growing. Not taller exactly, longer, heavier. Each swell lifts the ship, as though some enormous creature beneath the surface has placed both hands under the hull. Up, up, up. Then over, then down. Again, again, again. The rhythm becomes almost unbearable. Not because it's violent, because it never ends. Fatigue isn't created by a single difficult moment. It's created by thousands of ordinary difficult moments, repeated without mercy. Your shoulders ache, your hands burn. Salt has worked its way into every small cut and blister. It stings constantly, tiny reminders that seawater is many things. Gentle is not one of them. A flash of lightning briefly illuminates the deck. For an instant, everything appears frozen. Every sailor bent against the wind, every rope stretched tight, every sail glowing pale white, the rain hanging in the air like millions of tiny silver threads. Then darkness returns, leaving only the memory. The older sailor notices you staring upward. Beautiful, you nod. It is, he smiles. Never trust beautiful things at sea. You think about that. The stars are beautiful, the sunrise is beautiful, the calm ocean is beautiful, even storms, in their own terrifying way, are beautiful. Perhaps beauty has always been slightly dangerous, somewhere below deck. The pumps begin working, not because the ship is sinking, because every wooden ship leaked, always, even on calm days. Oak planks swelled when wet, shrank when dry. Tiny gaps constantly opened and closed. Water seeped in. Storms merely encouraged the process. Every few hours, someone pumped the bilge. Not glamorous work, not heroic, just necessary. Much of history survives because ordinary people quietly completed unpleasant jobs. You hear the steady rhythm, thunk, thunk, thunk. The long pump handles rise and fall below your feet. It becomes another heartbeat aboard the ship, as familiar now as the creaking timbers, as necessary as breathing. The rain intensifies. Visibility shrinks. The bow disappears behind curtains of water. The stern fades into mist. The ship seems to exist inside its own tiny world. Everything beyond 50 feet simply ceases to exist. It is astonishing how lonely an ocean can become. A cry comes from somewhere high above. You look up instinctively, far in the rigging. A sailor clings to a yardarm. The wind whips his jacket violently. He's little more than a dark silhouette against flashes of lightning. You cannot imagine climbing up there. He cannot imagine refusing. Some job simply had to be done, no matter the weather, no matter the fear. The older sailor catches you watching. Scared for him? Yes. He nods slowly. So is he. The answer surprises you. You mean, he isn't fearless? The old sailor smiles. No one's fearless. He glances toward the man high above. He just climbs anyway. The thought settles quietly in your mind. History often celebrates courage. But perhaps courage isn't the absence of fear. Perhaps it's tying another knot with shaking hands, climbing another rope, taking another watch, holding on for one more wave. The ship suddenly lurches harder than before. Everyone freezes, not from fear, from attention. Something has changed. The wind has shifted. The sails strain in a different direction. The officer shouts new orders. The crew moves instantly, because storms never remain the same for long. Every hour writes new rules. Your fingers have become wrinkled from constant seawater. Your boots squelch with every step. Your face tastes permanently of salt. Your hair, what remains uncovered after losing your hat, has become plastered against your forehead. You can no longer remember feeling dry. It seems like something that happened in another lifetime. Night arrives almost unnoticed, not because the sun sets, because the clouds simply become darker. Lanterns remain covered. Too much exposed flame in heavy weather is dangerous. Instead, you work mostly by memory, by touch, by instinct, by the occasional flash of lightning. Imagine repairing your roof during a thunderstorm, while someone periodically turns the lights on for half a second, then off again. Welcome to maritime engineering. Hours blend together. No one speaks unless necessary. Conversation requires energy. Energy has become precious. Even jokes have grown shorter. A sailor beside you mutters, "Lovely weather." Another answers, "Perfect for ducks." You laugh despite yourself. It isn't a brilliant joke. It doesn't need to be. Sometimes, the smallest laugh feels like the warmest fire. The sea keeps climbing. The wind keeps screaming. The ship keeps answering, not with defiance, not with pride, but with determination. Every beam bends. Every rope stretches, every sailor adapts, and somehow, against all reasonable expectations, the old wooden ship continues forward, one wave at a time, 1 hour at a time, one exhausted heartbeat at a time. Then it happens, a sound unlike every other, not thunder, not wind, not waves, a single, sharp, explosive crack. The entire crew stops breathing, because every sailor aboard knows exactly what that sound might mean. And if they're right, the storm has only just begun. Crack. The noise tears through the storm like a rifle shot. Not thunder, not lightning, wood, heavy, ancient, load-bearing wood. Every sailor freezes. Not for long, only a heartbeat. But aboard a sailing ship, a heartbeat can feel like an eternity. The older sailor beside you slowly closes his eyes. Not in surrender, in concentration. He's listening, waiting for another sound. You do the same. The wind screams through the rigging. Rain drums across the deck. Water crashes against the hull. The mast groans overhead. Then, nothing else. The old sailor exhales. Not the mast. Your shoulders relax before you even realize you've been holding your breath. What was it? He points toward the bow. Probably a yard. Only probably. Somehow, that word offers surprisingly little comfort. Now, for anyone who has never stood beneath 3 towering wooden masts, let's explain why everyone aboard reacted the way they did. A mast wasn't simply a very large pole, it was the spine of the entire ship. Hundreds of feet of rope depended upon it. Thousands of square feet of sail depended upon it. The ship's speed, its steering, sometimes even its survival, depended upon those massive columns of oak or pine remaining exactly where they belonged. If a mast failed during a storm, it rarely failed politely. Imagine balancing a 5-story tree on your roof. Now imagine that tree is tied to hundreds of ropes pulled tight from every direction. Now imagine the tree suddenly snapping. It doesn't simply fall. It drags everything with it. Sails, rigging, spars, blocks, lines, anything unfortunate enough to be attached, which was almost everything. The crew races toward the bow. You follow, careful not to become another problem for someone else to solve. The deck rolls beneath your feet. Water surges around your boots. Rain blinds you every few seconds. Then, you see it. One of the yardarms has split near its outer end. Not completely, but enough. The long horizontal spar hangs awkwardly, supported by strained ropes that creak under impossible tension. The wood has opened like a cracked bone. Several sailors are already climbing. Of course they are. Storm or no storm, the damage cannot wait. Broken equipment has an astonishing talent for becoming far more broken if ignored. You watch one sailor disappear into the darkness above. The mast sways beneath him. Not dramatically, just enough. Every gust bends the entire structure several inches. That's another detail most people never imagine. Wooden masts weren't rigid towers. They flexed, constantly. If they hadn't, they would have snapped far more often. Ships survived storms not by resisting movement, but by allowing it. Nature often rewards flexibility over stubbornness, a lesson humans occasionally forget. The man climbing above you seems almost impossibly calm. One hand, one foot, another hand, another foot. His movements are slow, measured. There is no rushing. Storms punish haste. Halfway up, a wave strikes. Not the mast, the ship. The entire vessel rolls sharply. Every sailor on deck instinctively widens his stance. High above, the climber swings several feet sideways. Your heart leaps into your throat. He simply waits, allows the mast to settle, then continues climbing, as though hanging 30 feet above a furious ocean were an ordinary Tuesday. Perhaps, for him, it is. The older sailor notices your expression. You get used to heights? He chuckles. No, you don't. You get used to climbing anyway. There it is again. That quiet difference. People often imagine historical sailors as fearless giants, men carved from oak, untouched by doubt. Reality was far more interesting. Most were ordinary people. Ordinary people who became extraordinarily skilled at continuing despite fear. History isn't built only by heroes. More often, it's built by tired professionals. The damaged spar is secured. Extra lines are rigged around it. The captain decides not to replace it until calmer weather. A sensible decision. Storms have a way of punishing ambitious repairs. Sometimes the smartest choice is simply surviving until tomorrow. Below deck, things are hardly more peaceful. The ship moves with heavy determination now. Each roll sends loose droplets raining from the beams overhead. Tiny streams run down support posts. The lanterns swing so violently that most have been extinguished entirely. Darkness fills every corner. Only occasional flashes of lightning slip through hatchways above. Each flash reveals the berth deck for a fraction of a second. Rows of hammocks, faces, ropes, then darkness again, like photographs taken by the sky itself. You're finally ordered below, not because the storm has ended, because another crew has relieved your watch. Your legs feel strangely unreliable, not weak, just confused. They spent so many hours balancing against moving decks that standing still now feels almost unnatural. The hammock waits, rocking gently. Or perhaps not so gently anymore. You stare at it. The old sailor grins. Go on. You think I'll actually sleep? He shrugs. You'll try. That's the secret. Storm sleep isn't real sleep. It's surrender. You don't fall asleep because conditions become comfortable. You fall asleep because your body eventually decides, I've done everything I can, and simply stops arguing. You climb into the canvas. The hammock immediately begins swinging. Long arcs now, not the peaceful cradle of calmer seas. More like a pendulum. Left, right, oddly. It's still better than sleeping on the deck itself. A fixed bed would throw you from side to side. The hammock continues adapting. Even now. Even here. Quietly proving why sailors trusted it for centuries. Above, the storm continues. You hear boots running. Orders shouted, water crashing, the deep groan of the hull, the rhythmic pumps below. Thunk, 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 removing seawater that never seems to stop arriving. Every sound blends together until the ship resembles one enormous living creature. Its heartbeat, the pumps, its voice, the timbers, its breathing, the wind through the rigging, and you are one tiny cell inside it. Sleep comes, then disappears, then returns. You dream, briefly, that you're back on land. The bed doesn't move. The room is quiet. Someone is making breakfast. You can smell fresh bread. Then boom, a wave slams the hull. Your eyes fly open. Darkness, canvas, salt. The dream vanishes almost instantly. Home feels strangely distant now, almost imaginary. A sailor somewhere nearby mutters in his sleep. Another quietly prays. Someone farther aft begins snoring with astonishing determination. The oldest sailor whispers, "I don't know how he does that." You smile in the darkness. Apparently, there exists one person capable of sleeping through the end of the world. Every workplace has one. Hours drift past. The storm refuses to leave. Rain continues. Wind continues. The sea continues lifting the ship like a toy. You stop wondering when it will end. Instead, you begin measuring time differently. One watch, another meal. Another bell, another attempt at sleep. The ocean has quietly rewritten your calendar. Sometime after midnight, the carpenter walks through the berth deck carrying his lantern, not repairing people, repairing the ship. He pauses beside one beam, places his ear against the oak, listens, then nods to himself and moves on. You can't help smiling. The ship's doctor has made another house call. Wood speaks, not in words, in tension, in vibration, in tiny changes of sound. Experienced shipwrights learned those languages over decades. A beam under too much strain creaked differently than one merely complaining about old age. Much like experienced mechanics can recognize an engine problem before opening the hood. Centuries change. Craftsmanship rarely does. Eventually, the motion softens. Not by much, just enough. The violent crashes become heavy swells. The wind lowers its voice. Rain fades from pounding to whispering. No one celebrates, not yet. Sailors know better. Storms often pretend to leave, only to return with renewed enthusiasm. Still, something has changed. You can feel it. The ship no longer fights every wave. She rides them, tired, scarred, but steady. Like an old horse finally finding familiar ground after a difficult climb. Your eyelids grow heavier. For the first time in nearly 2 days, your body begins believing sleep might actually happen. Real sleep. Not stolen moments, not exhausted blackouts. Actual rest. You let the hammock carry you. Forward, back, forward, back. The motion feels almost kind now. Outside. The Atlantic continues breathing beneath the hull, indifferent as ever, patient as ever, beautiful as ever, and somewhere beyond the clouds, the sun is already beginning another journey toward dawn. Whether you see it depends entirely on what the sea decides next, and just like that, the storm passes. Not because you conquered it, not because the ocean finally admitted defeat. Simply because storms, like everything else, eventually move on. The sea that tried to throw you into darkness only yesterday now rocks your hammock with almost motherly gentleness. The same timbers that screamed beneath impossible strain return to their familiar whispers. The sails breathe once more. The ropes sway lazily overhead, and somewhere beyond the eastern horizon, another sunrise quietly paints the Atlantic gold. You survived, not through extraordinary strength, not through impossible luck, but because you learned the greatest lesson every sailor eventually discovered. You stopped fighting the sea and started moving with it. Perhaps that's why the lives of these ordinary sailors continue to fascinate us centuries later. They weren't superheroes. They weren't fearless adventurers chasing glory every morning. Most were simply tired people trying to do an honest day's work in one of the harshest workplaces humanity has ever built. They laughed. They complained about food. They missed home. They argued over ropes. They treasured letters from loved ones. They celebrated calm weather, and they feared the sound of breaking wood in the middle of the night. In many ways, they weren't so different from us. Only their office happened to float across an endless ocean. Tonight, as you settle into your own bed, take a moment to appreciate something these sailors rarely enjoyed. A mattress that doesn't swing. A roof that doesn't groan beneath Atlantic storms. A room that stays exactly where you left it. It's amazing how history can make the ordinary feel extraordinary. If this journey helped you relax, or perhaps taught you something new about the forgotten lives of the men who crossed the world's oceans aboard fragile wooden ships, then I'm truly grateful you spent your evening here. And if you've made it all the way to the end, I'd love to know. Leave a comment below with the word anchored. That way I'll know you stayed with us until the very last wave. And while you're there, tell me where you're listening from. I always enjoy seeing just how far these bedtime voyages travel around the world. If you enjoyed sailing through history together, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to Dreaming Through Ages for more slow, immersive journeys into the past. There are countless forgotten worlds still waiting for us. Ancient cities, medieval castles, Roman roads, frozen Viking seas, desert caravans beneath endless stars, and thousands of ordinary people whose stories history almost forgot. Until then, dim the lights, get comfortable, close your eyes. Listen to the gentle rhythm of the waves one last time. Imagine the old wooden ship disappearing slowly into the morning mist. Its white sails glowing beneath the rising sun, growing smaller and smaller until it becomes nothing more than a tiny silhouette against the endless sea. Then, nothing at all. Only the sound of the ocean and the quiet comfort of knowing that somewhere far beyond the horizon, the sea is still carrying stories home. Good night, sleep well, and I'll see you in the next journey through history.